Today is National Moon Day. I'm Dr. Sri Banerjee, and I wanted to give you a little bit of a talk on something a little creative, something different than what I usually talk about, which is numbers, statistics, and public health. So believe it or not, a lot to talk about the moon. There's actually I'm going to start off by giving you some articulation of some stories. Some of them get quite complicated quickly, so see if you can follow what I'm trying to tell you in some of these different stories that I'm familiar with, that I grew up with in Indian mythology, and also looking into some of the pre-Islamic cultures. Additionally, there are many cultures all over the world that pray to the moon as god or goddess. For instance, Artemis, Selene, these are all common goddess names, but Chandra, Chandra is a god name for the moon, and there's also additional god names. Anyways, I'm going to go over that a little bit more, but so I call this dimensions because it's like different dimensions. So the 27 nakshatras are considered lunar mansions in Vedic terms. So that's why I named this talk Lunar Dimensions. Anyway, so again, I always like kind of a change in perspective. So here's somebody who would be living on the moon, looking back at Earth. Interesting kind of change in view. It would be interesting to actually do this one day. So here's the nakshatras. Again, 27 wives. Daksha had 27 daughters, and so the moon married all of them, but only actually spent a lot of time with one, Rohini. One story goes that because of this, that there was somewhat of a curse, and so afterwards, Chandra, the moon god, lost his light. So then Narada goes to the depressed Chandra and says, "Hey, look, you can go to the god Shiva, and he can try to see what he can do." So Shiva goes, and the moon god goes to Shiva and says, "Hey, can I get your protection first?" Because Shiva has a tendency to become angry very quickly. So he goes to ask for his light, and he goes to ask for protection. He said, "Yeah, it's fine." But then Daksha finds out what he's about to do. So Daksha shows up, and he says, "I thought you said that you weren't going to interfere in our affairs." And Chandra is not doing what he was told, and so he said, "Fine, okay, I'll protect. Fine, I'll protect part of the moon." So from then on, he takes a part of the new moon and the crescent moon afterwards in its head. There's also the other story where actually, alternatively, where the moon falls in love with the wife of Jupiter, Brihaspati, and Tara is her name, and so they actually out of wedlock have a child known as Buddha, and Buddha is Wednesday, and so and of course Daksha Brihaspati is upset, so of course this child is cursed to neither be male nor female, and so this is seen as a curse. So the other parts of this is even in the even within other scriptures as well, There's some statements written to the moon. For instance, in the Quran, the Holy Quran, it says, "Do not prostrate to the sun or the moon, but prostrate to Allah who created them." So the idea is that the sun and the moon are actually acknowledged, and that is what is interesting. And so if you go back into the pre-Islamic lunar deities, then you'll find that there were actually some that were male lunar deities that were revered and respected in these areas for thousands of years. And the picture on the left is actually of Muhammad, but also showing some other things, some historical, archaeological things. So ebb and flow, how does it associate with research? Well, found that in 2018, bipolar disorder may be affected by changes in the lunar cycle. So examined 17 people whose bipolar disorder tended to switch rapidly from depression to mania. Causes less deep sleep and later entrance into REM sleep. There's some evidence of that. And there might be a circadian pacemaker sort of, which synchronizes the lunar patterns to be changed by sleep. So these are some biological patterns, but definitely the idea of lunacy, that mental health was solely affected by the ebb and flow of the moon, that has been debunked. There was this idea that because the brain is one of the most fluid humors within the body, that it is affected more so because it's fluid, just like the ocean and the tides are affected by the moon. So take it or leave it. This is that is what was the theory. So modern attempts at understanding the moon. One way humankind tries to understand something is by naming it. And around the 17th or 18th century, a scientist by the name of Giovanni actually went through and initially thought that these were oceans, so they called them mare or mare. So Mare Frigoris, a sea of cold at the top. These are interesting names: Sea of Serenity, Sea of Tranquility. And they actually did later find a high density gravitational forces here. In some instances, actually, one of the stories, I'm trying to see if, I think it was Mare Crisium, Sea of Crisis. Like the story was, well, not the story, but the theory is that the asteroid impact on the other side was so tremendous that there was magma that spewed out from this end of the moon. So that's how some of these were formed. Some of these craters were formed. So you have the Mare Imbrium, the Sea of Showers, and then the Kepler crater, Copernicus crater, Aristarchus crater, and then the Oceanus Procellarum, which is the Ocean of Storms, Grimaldi crater, Virgius crater, Mare Cognitum, sea that has become known, and that's right here, and Mare Humorum, sea of moisture, so that's down here. So interesting names for all of these. Ocean of Storms, I kind of like. Sea of Nectar is an interesting area too. So this crater right here is the Sea of Nectar. Sea of Vapors is all the way over here. And then Mare Insularum. So take a look at these. Sea of Serenity, Sea of Crisis. Just try to see these different craters and try to understand them in different pieces, and see if you can better know our one and only moon. So I hope this has given you a little bit of a light sort of synopsis of what all the pieces of our moon is. I mean, after all, the moon was part of Earth. That's the most dominant theory. About 4 billion years ago, there was one body, and then there was an asteroid that came in and had a huge impact, and the moon just broke off from the larger Earth. So get to know the moon. It was part of us a long time ago. Thank you for listening.